Hello, I'm Erin Marcus, founder and CEO of Conquer Your Business, and I want to welcome you to Ready Yet? If all you needed was a step-by-step plan of what to do, you could buy a book on how to succeed and you would be all set. But here's the rub. You'll never do what it takes until you become the person it takes to do it. The Ready Yet podcast is dedicated to those who are ready to become the person who succeeds, ready to become the person who steps into more, and ready to become the best version of themselves. In the I'm Ready interview series, join me for inspiring conversations with people who figured out who they needed to be in order to achieve their dreams, and were brave enough to be that person. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Ready Yet podcast, where I get to kind of do my favorite thing, which is talking to other human beings, right? Talking to other people, all focused on their story to help you learn who you have to be in order to get where you want to go. And I'm really excited about my guest today, Joan Sotkin, because we're basically the same person in so many ways. The biggest problem we're going to have today is not talking for 3 hours. So it's kind of our mode. And, it's one of those things where you meet someone and it's like, all right, instant connection. So I'm really, really excited that you're joining with me today because I know your story can help so many people. But why don't you give everyone a little more formal introduction to who you are and what is it that you do?
Oh, that's such a long story, but we're going to keep it short.
Short version of the story.
Since I'm 80 years old, it's a long story, and I don't mind saying how long I've been walking on this planet. It sometimes seems like a very long journey. But I was born in 1940. So there was nothing much expected from women except to get married and have children. So I did the marriage thing twice.
Oh, okay.
And thought that's not my idea of a good time. I didn't want to be a perfect housewife. I hated housework. And I didn't even want to be a mother. I was missing something in that brain thing. I didn't want to be a mother.
I have the same challenge. I love playing with my nieces and nephews. I love kids. I love babies. I've never had a big pull to have one.
No, I like when they start crying, give them back to their mother. And changing diapers, I don't think that ever appealed to my mother either. Anyhow, so I had to find out who I am. If I'm not a mother and I'm not a wife, and it's 1976, and I know that I need to be in business for myself. I had tried teaching. I taught first grade for a year and had nightmares.
So you knew you didn't want children. So you thought the best response would be to go take care of everybody else's children.
Not a good idea. Fortunately, I didn't take a lot of teaching courses. So I just showed up and discovered that was not my idea of a good time. Was selling great books of the Western world door to door.
Oh, wow.
Which I really loved. I like Sign Here, Please. And they saw my talent and trained me to work with business and professional men and women in their offices. There weren't that many women during the day. So okay. I learned how to sell. I learned how to say, Sign Here, Please. And somewhere along the line, I got the idea. Oh, and I started meditating in 1972, which was pretty early on.
Yeah.
And in 1973, I gave up sugar, alcohol, caffeine, and processed foods.
So you were living all of this stuff that I love how you were basically living all this stuff that everyone thinks is so new. And
right. 1973. And I had moved after the marriage to the beach in a wonderful house on Venice Beach, and ran out of money because I wasn't making any money, and decided that I had to give everything I owned away. That I had a ticket to go back east to cousin's bar mitzvah or something. So I had a giveaway day. And the person who drove me to the airport was a taxi driver who wanted my bed. So it all worked out very perfectly. And And I wound up wandering without knowing where the money was coming from or where I was going to stay for a number of years. And fortunately, I knew I was in the middle of an interesting story, so I kept a day-at-a-glance diary and kept notes. Eventually wrote a book called Search for Connection, which was my way of getting the story out of my system. And I really needed to tell the story because
So I want to back up 1 second, because one of the things in an entrepreneurial journey is, especially if you don't come from an entrepreneurial family, is even if they support you, they don't understand and they kind of think you're crazy. I can't even imagine the messages you were getting from loved ones when you decide, almost intentionally, maybe a little accidentally, to not do anything. And like you say, wander around and figure it out.
Okay, and I didn't see it as doing nothing.
Right.
Doing nothing is doing something, right?
They did, my boyfriend who I live with still goes, I don't know, you do your thing, you have your coffee, you disappear for 4 hours, I don't even know what you're doing. Are you even doing anything? You surface for lunch. They don't know.
Right. And my father stopped talking to me.
Wow.
And my mother said, just call me once a week so I know you're still alive. And that's pretty much what I did. And I thought never thought of myself as being homeless, which I in fact was. I just saw it as my spiritual journey because I was learning how to listen to that inner voice that seemed to know more about who I was and what I needed to do than I did. And I saw that the advice I was getting from the grownups didn't make any sense to me. So why not listen to this voice that made more sense to me and was leading me to what I thought was interesting? I had been into metaphysics for a long time. So weird stuff seemed like a treat, not something I should move away from. So I was willing.
Did you read The Surrender Experiment? Is that what it's called? It really just sounds like what you were doing was letting go completely, and letting in intuition, that trust, building that trust in your own thought processes.
And yes, I didn't see it as God talking to me. The way I describe it now is I think that we exist in more than one dimension. We don't live just in 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
That there are other dimensions. I don't try to give them numbers. And there's a part of us that's more connected to the whole than I can imagine. And that it sees a bigger picture than I can see from my little place in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Sure.
And that if I surrender to that it's going to make my life much more interesting than if I try to figure it out myself.
Well, or force a round peg in a square, no, a round peg in a square hole, or a square peg in a round hole, right? Force an issue that wasn't your creation.
Right. And being a woman born in 1940, having to figure out who this woman is today, who doesn't want to be a good wife.
It's not even having to figure out, taking a stand and giving yourself permission to figure it out instead of following the path. Right. It was huge.
Yes. And there's a whole nother dimension. I come from a family of 5 Capricorns. We were all born between December 30th and January 3rd. So I say we never touched each other. We just handed each other $20 bills. There was no talk of emotions. It was all about money. Mm-hmm. And while I was on this journey, somewhere along the line, I heard, go buy a pound of tumbled stones. And I had no idea what that meant. But my mother used to give away these mineral specimens with a little pewter animal she would paste onto
Yeah.
it. So I knew where there was a lapidary store. And I went and I said, I need a pound of tumbled stones. He said, what size? And my hand went up and I said, that size. That became a huge business.
Wow.
I was the first person to market crystals and minerals for healing and meditation nationwide.
I love it.
It started in 1977 was when I had that message. And I made an absolute fortune with my line of stones, Joan stones, that were in 600 stores.
Oh my gosh.
And what it was, for $5, you could get a course in meditation with this stone.
I one of the things, and you're gonna laugh because you're, a generation ahead of me. When you're a teenager and you think you know everything, right? And you're in your 20s and you think you know everything. And I'm finally at 51 of the age where I realize how ludicrous we were. Yes. And I'm listening to you and I'm thinking of all the people I know who, like I've already said, feel like they've come across the next newest, biggest.
Right.
No one's ever heard this. This is now so popular. And you're like, yeah, been there, done that 50 years ago.
Right. And what I didn't know how to do was manage cash flow.
Okay.
So even though, because no one ever said that word to me, I had no idea what cash flow meant.
And the intuitive voice didn't tell you about that part. They only
and I had a bookkeeper who would do whatever I told him. I didn't realize I needed a controller. I mean, it's a whole different world.
Right.
And so, and my father had gone bankrupt and I wound up going bankrupt because I loved buying crystals, but I didn't know how to manage cash flow. So.
And so one of the things I tell people all the time, and people feel guilty and bad about it, but what your business does for a living and growing a business are two separate things that have nothing to do with each other.
Absolutely. And when I went to the bank and said, I've reached my level of incompetence, they thought that was cute. They thought it was cute that this woman was making all this money selling rocks. In today's money, I was bringing in almost $80,000 a month.
Oh my God.
I had no idea what I was doing. I just kept buying more crystals. Not a good idea. And so the work I do today is about your relationship with money.
Yeah.
And so because the family, and I had 2 millionaire brothers, it got to the point where I couldn't rub two pennies together, and computers came out and I wound up with all these Macs, and I figured out how to create mail order catalogs. And I truly believe that whatever you've been through or whatever you're going through is exactly what you need to become who you're becoming. Absolutely. The problem is you don't find out who you're becoming till you're in your 80s.
And I'm going to just push back on you a little bit, and you're going to think I'm crazy, but the conversation we had before we started recording was even you learning a new thing about yourself.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's my job. In other words, I've been around wealth and celebrity all my life. I worked in Hollywood. My brother was the executive producer of Golden Girls. The other brother was a very successful businessman. And after I went bankrupt, I was so devastated by this incredible loss of my identity as this entrepreneur. And there was no internet. There was nowhere to go for information. And right. I tried hiring people to straighten out things. That's why I gave everything away again, because I saw that I wasn't getting the advice that Joan Sotkin needed. Mm-hmm. They might have been giving me the advice that someone else needed. Mm-hmm. And I was willing to just listen. And I was still dealing with a lot of physical stuff. I had serious physical problems and worked through all those problems, and actually didn't find out what it was at the base of it till I was 65.
And I don't know that people realize that while you're, because you've just now mentioned it. So while you're going on this journey of self-discovery that women, especially then, weren't really allowed to do, trying something that women weren't doing, you were also battling physical ailments.
Right. And when the doctor said to me when I was 30, you'll never be healthy. You're just a hypochondriac. You better learn to live with all your problems. And being the, I have a pretty strong screw you attitude. And so I thought,
this is why we get along, right?
Yes, that's not my story. So I started reading about physiology and microbiology, and I finally found the doctor who was really offbeat, and he was the one who got me off the sugar. And, so it's been a multidimensional journey, and my love of science really helped, because I had to do all this research on how the body works and what what's not working and what, and there was one health food store in Los Angeles at the time. It's not like there was a healer on every street.
Right.
And so it's been a fascinating journey, not always comfortable, but it's been fascinating. And all I ask of life is that it be interesting. And I got that. I have to say I got what I wanted, which is an interesting life. And I turned out to be interesting, which is great, because if someone who likes to talk, it better be interesting.
It helps to be interesting. Otherwise, you don't really get the opportunity.
No. So, and somewhere along the line, the voice said, "You're moving to New Mexico." New Mexico? Most people don't even know where New Mexico is. I didn't either. And I thought, why would I want to go to New Mexico? My mother and I had been to Santa Fe a year after my father died, and I was sick from the altitude the entire time. So I didn't have this burning desire to go to Santa Fe, but I knew to listen to the voice. And that was in 1996. I had gotten online in 1995 and figured out how to build a website. Even though I'm an English major qualified to do nothing, I figured out.
You went from rocks to websites.
And it was pretty easy back then. You just had to steal a little HTML coding from someone else's site, and you had a site. Since I had been in desktop publishing while I had the crystal business, I got the idea how to put things together. And so I came to Santa Fe with $200 and whatever fit in my car.
Wow.
And I was really sick. And I wound up at St. Vincent's Hospital, which had to take me, even though I had no insurance, because it was the only hospital in town. And that's the rule.
Right.
And I got things fixed, that had been broken for 20 some odd years. They fixed my stomach. And since then, it's been living my life, listening to that intuition and letting it expand. I've been doing Zoom or Skype since they first came out. So I knew that I couldn't make a living in Santa Fe because everybody here thinks they're poor. And so this is perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And being a people person, I get to meet people like you who I would never, how could we possibly, right. And one of your people turned me on to you, and it's like this string of humans, and I love people. So I've created this world where I certainly have learned how to manage cash flow. So, so when I go on these journeys, like the last 4 years, I really pulled back because I knew there was chaos coming. I couldn't have comprehended the COVID, but I was getting ready for this. And so even though I have to go through periods that look a little scary, I've been through a little scary before, and I know that it's a waste of time.
Right. Well, and so one of the things that you've done over and over and over again is have the confidence, not just the wherewithal to listen to the voice, but the confidence to act on the messages you are receiving.
Exactly. And so many people say to me, I hear my inner voice, but I'm afraid to do what it says.
So where does that come from?
The resistance or the voice?
The courage.
The courage, I think that's built in. And I know that you had challenges in your early life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've been through a lot of physical challenges and family issues, it's not like it was the perfect family. Thank you. No. I always say my brother got to boss him around B. Arthur. I was easy.
Right.
Okay. So I think that there may be something that's inherited. My mother went to college when she was 15, and she went to Israel when she was in 1930 something.
Oh, wow.
She went to Israel on a boat to live with the relatives. And so when I was on my journey, she that was her journey.
There was some frame of reference where she
understood. And we're the only Sotkins in the whole country. Anyone with the name of Sotkin, we have multiplied. So there's more than just 5 of us. There's more than us now. And my father, who was nuts, taught us to be different. Which is, although he still wanted me to, get my teaching degree and become a teacher, which I didn't do, but I became a teacher, because they needed more teachers like they do now,
Right.
And so it's really, when I gave everything away, I didn't see that I had a choice.
So in a way, it's responding to the voice, sometimes out of instinct, sometimes out of necessity.
Or both, but those two things are the same.
Yeah.
For me, listening to the voice is the necessity.
Well, and I think as you listen to the voice, and even if it doesn't go well, your subconscious realizes you didn't die. You start to get a little braver and a little more confident that you can survive what the voice tells you to do.
Okay, so here's my theory. You have to find out what you're not before you find out what you are. Which means you have to try things that apparently don't work out.
Yes, I've done a lot of that.
Okay, but they have worked out because you've learned more about yourself, and that to me is the ultimate journey.
Well, and what you're talking about, and I've received this compliment, and I know that you're the same, is you can only do that when you do not interpret things that don't work out as expected as a failure.
It's the expectations that get in the way.
Expectations that mess you up every time.
Right. So I don't see now I can say it, cohesively. I don't see things as good or bad.
They just are.
It's like people talk about negative emotions. And my whole thing is built around your emotions and how they create your life stories. I don't see that there's such a thing as a negative emotion.
Right. Neither you or I talk about our health history with negative energy.
No, it
just is.
It's what I had to go through.
Right.
And I have doctors asking me what to do about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome because I've had to live with it. And let me tell you what I do. And a doctor said to me not that long ago, you should be in a wheelchair. No.
I don't have time for that. I'm too busy. I'm entirely too busy for that.
That's not on my agenda. So I do these stretches every day, and I go walking 1.5 miles to 2 miles a day. And I haven't eaten sugar since 1973. And I take care of my vehicle.
Yeah.
And it's like driving a jalopy. You have to give.
Doesn't mean it still can't get you there, right?
Right. It just takes a little extra care. Right. And you sometimes have to go to the side of the road. And, I just made an appointment to get an iron infusion where I call it pumping iron, where they give you intravenous iron. Okay, if that's what it takes to give me a little more energy, I'll do it.
That's the same approach. And I don't know if the viewers appreciate this or not. I'm the same way. I have eye surgery scheduled in 3 weeks. It's September 30th. I just did my plan for October. I gave myself 2 days. Right? I got 2 days. I just don't have time. There's too much I want to do to make a big deal out of this stuff.
Right. And I don't want to, I realize that part of my identity in the past was I was a sick person and that I was feeling sorry for myself. And in that, wanted other people to feel sorry for me.
Right. Because that's how you were getting attention. So those little
Absolutely.
dopamine hits, you end up mapping, people care about me when I'm sick.
And it's true, because when I'm not sick,
nobody calls.
No one wants to help me, because I seem so self-sufficient. So I've had to learn how to ask for help. And it's also
about balancing, like you talk about taking care of yourself. Okay, I make a joke that I'm not spending a lot of time in a surgery. I have the time set aside. I take care of myself, but I don't use it as an excuse to take 6 weeks off.
Right. And I don't want you to feel sorry for me.
Right.
There's no reason to.
There's no reason
created, I was given a clunker when I came here. I was told to make the best of it. And
look what it's done.
And it's taught me so much about acceptance and satisfaction, and there is no right or wrong, and everything that you go through is what you need to become who you're becoming. And so I don't see that anything I go through is bad. It may be uncomfortable for a while, but I know enough that if you go through the discomfort, it's like dealing with emotions. If you let yourself go through the emotion, on the other side is peace of mind.
Yeah. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Ready Yet podcast. I know I really enjoy having conversations about who you need to be in order to reach new heights. As founder and CEO of Conquer Your Business, I work with my clients at the intersection where what they need to do to succeed meets who they need to be to do it. If you would like to have a conversation about your business, please reach out to me at erin@conqueryourbusiness.com. And the choice. The other thing that you exhibit over and over and over again is the recognition that you have a choice.
Yes. And so I was interested in how people make their choices. And it's all a matter of brain science. Yeah. And your habits, your habitual thoughts, beliefs, and emotions, most of which you learn in the beginning of your life. And you inherit the emotions, you inherit the thought patterns from your relatives, bless them.
And let's face it, our parents did not have mental health care. So what we inherited was whatever it was that they had.
I'm sure my father had a borderline personality. He would have been sent away somewhere, but he was a Sotkin. My brothers and I talk about the curse of the Sotkins, because we always have to be different. So my brother's appendix were on the wrong side. And I go to a doctor and he says, I've never seen an ear canal like yours. And I just say, that's the curse. That's the curse of the Sotkins. It's
why be normal, right? Why be like everybody else?
Right. So fortunately, I have a sense of humor.
My
brother was a comedy writer, and I was always the straight person. It was like being brought up in the house with Don Rickles. And I was the one who they made all the jokes about. So, it hasn't been a normal, well, I don't know what is a normal life, but if I have to live an abnormal life, this one was fine.
Right. This one's serving you well.
As my brother will say, welcome to my hell. I couldn't get my car serviced on the right day. Welcome to my hell. If
we call it, I was talking to a colleague of mine in my last business, and we were in this meeting about something that I was gonna be working on his behalf. And I said, it's gonna be a freaking zoo. And he looked at me, he goes, yep, but it's your zoo. That's exactly it.
And what's funny is I had a client who actually owned a zoo.
Oh, that would be awesome.
I said to her one day, it's like a zoo. She said, yeah, I have my business is a zoo.
Literally.
And she would tell me about driving the giraffe from Florida to Long Island.
the things you're not allowed to do anymore.
Right. So
what are you most, it kind of has come out in the conversation. if you had to give an entrepreneur some advice, having been through so many iterations of it, especially before it was something that was even on the map as allowable, not just encouraged, but even allowable, what would you tell an entrepreneur today? Like, what are the traits? What are the things they need to do? Or more like, who is the person they need to be?
The top three are love yourself, let go, and connect.
It sounds so simple when you just say it like that.
I know the connect part is hard for people who want to be entrepreneurs.
Oh, I was gonna say the love yourself part is what.
Oh right. It's
so many of them.
And I came up with these three. One day I was on a podcast and someone said, what are the three things you'd like to leave people with? And that's what came out of my mouth. And I thought, that's really good. I trust what comes out of my mouth.
Yes, that's so huge too. When you don't trust what's going to come out of your mouth because of imposter syndrome, because you're insecure, you end up over preparing, and then there's nothing authentic about your efforts.
Right. But you can also be okay with what comes out of your mouth and still be insecure.
Well, yeah, you can
I'll do a podcast, when I do a podcast, I don't prepare anything. I just have a conversation because I'm not worried about running out of things to say. And sometimes I'll think, oh, I got to do that one over, especially the solo episodes that I do. Yeah. And I thought, and I'll think, oh, that was a little bit too deep. And I'll hear, no, Joan, use it.
Use it.
And
I've had to learn to do that too. Don't overthink it after the fact.
Right. And so to me, love yourself, let go, and connect includes follow that inner direction. The problem is if you're drinking a lot, if you eat a lot of sugar, if you're eating a lot of crap, you're not getting clear messages.
Well, and learning how to tell the difference between an inner voice of inspiration and an inner voice of fear. Right. You know what, right? Like giving you false information based on all of the stories of your past. Like, how do you know the difference?
Well, first of all, my original goal, there were two of them. Don't let your money determine how you feel. Mm-hmm. And don't worry. My first spiritual teacher, Swami Parampathy, said worrying is a waste of time and anything negative is a waste of time. And I thought, what a concept.
Right. Great.
So that's why I had to get into brain science, to learn about the amygdala, to find out what the biochemistry or the neurochemistry of fear was. But before I even knew that, it's like I learned that if I was having negative self-talk, I would say to myself, thank you for sharing, but we don't talk that way anymore. Yeah. In other words, I would set goals about who I wanted to be other than that sick person. One of the most important things I've learned, I was in a practitioner's office one day and I read the Brain Mind Bulletin. This was a long time ago. And it said that when people with multiple personality disorder change personalities, their whole body chemistry changes. That's amazing.
Right? That could happen from a thought.
And, 1 minute you've got diabetes and the next minute you don't. That to me said, Joan, all you have to do is change your persona. I didn't know what a big sentence that was. And I'm still working on it. When you and I had a conversation the other day and we were talking about what keeps people from moving forward. Mm-hmm. And, I've had ideas and someone said to me, Joan, are you afraid of wealth? No, it's got to be something else. And I realized it was my identity. In my book, Build Your Money Muscles, I talk about, what's your identity today and how to change it. But it's taken me all these years to really see that my family experience created my sense of who I am and my position in the world. And that I've been looking at this for years, but I took it to a whole nother level. And I'm not going to use the word deserve, not, I know an awful lot about emotions and money, and I know that when I had the crystal business, I know that I can make a lot of money. That I know that that's not a mystery to my system. And I realized that part of the journey is having the courage to be who you are.
Right.
But in order to do that, you have to find out who you are.
Well, and what you're talking about that I love, because I try to do it, and I think we're successful or unsuccessful with it to different degrees. But the first thing you need to do in order to do this type of work is to learn how to observe your behavior instead of just reacting to everything.
Right.
You have to be able to take a step back and say, this is what I did. This is what I was thinking. This is how I was feeling. And not everybody can take that step back.
They choose not to.
True. They choose not
to.
Okay.
So like if I was worrying about money, and I know it's never about money, okay, I would say, well, what are you feeling? And when have you felt that before? And what would you rather be feeling? And do you know how to feel that? So I actually had to teach myself how to recognize different feelings. Yeah. So I made a list of 50 feelings and I would practice the feelings. Because I saw early on that it's not just your beliefs and it's not just your thoughts, that your feelings are the bridge between your internal and external world, and that your feelings are the creative force behind your life stories.
It's the energy.
And if you're trying to fix it by doing a better job of keeping track of your money, which is very important, that's not going to fix it until you feel okay about who you are. If you have shame about yourself, you're going to be ashamed of your money. And when you look at your bank balance and you go, oh, I should be earning more, and how come Joe Schmo makes more than I do? That's shame. It has nothing to do with the money. The money doesn't care what you feel. It really doesn't care, just like a lot of other people.
Right. And I tell you, if you want to know how you feel about money, if you want to know how you feel about yourself, look around you. It's reflected back to you everywhere.
Yes, but you still have to be willing to feel the aloneness. And, I just reread the book Loneliness, which was written about 10 years ago, I guess. And we need aloneness. We need loneliness because when we were wandering around in the whatever it was, that aloneness made us connect to others. And if you feel alone, what your inner space is telling you is I need to connect. Remember, love yourself, let go, and connect. I need to connect to other people. And what happens is people are so ashamed of themselves, they're afraid to let anyone know who they are. I mean, one of the reasons I'm so honest on my podcast about what I'm going through and what I'm feeling, and I want to show people that you can be alive and not die if you tell people who you really are. And I'm still learning that. It's like saying, I really have to look at this identity thing and how I let my brothers beat me up on some level, even though they love me, that I have to understand how I chose on some very subconscious level to be in that one down position.
Right. I mean, and I would imagine as the little sister, it got you attention.
I was the big sister.
You were the big sister, and that still happens. See, I'm the big sister, and I tormented my little brother.
No, but it's like my father was, a male chauvinist to the nth degree. So it was, I was talking to someone the other day. We used to go to Lake Opatcong in New Jersey for the summer, and my father bought a rowboat, a motorized rowboat, and they called it Little Joan. And he said, did that do something for you that they called it Little Joan? We had a bigger boat too, but that wasn't
That
the
wasn't
Joan.
called Big Joan.
Joan was the rowboat that they went fishing in. So,
So if
beginning,
somebody wants to continue this conversation and learn, because I know how much you can help them with money and emotions and getting past their blocks, what is the best way for someone to reach out and connect with you?
Joan@prosperityplace.com or go to prosperityplace.com.
Prosperity.
Listen to my podcast every other episode, or just about. I talk about this stuff. And my stuff is new, but it's okay now. It was new 40 years ago, and no one wanted to hear what I was saying, which didn't help any.
And I really, and this is going to sound like a really weird analogy, but in the last couple of weeks, as I am looking to purchase a house, it has become clear to me that I have a different perspective than I did when I was 26 purchasing a house, because I am now old enough to be an adult long enough to have seen at least 2 full real estate cycles, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
And there is an amazing amount of insight that comes with having watched an ebb and flow repeat.
Yes.
And I think that's something that you can provide for people. Because it's one thing for a 30-year-old to say, this is what you need to do in order to thrive. But they're 30.
Right.
And it's an entirely different level of insight and knowledge that can be shared by someone, not just because of the length of time you've been studying it, but by the cycles that you have been able to witness.
Absolutely. And there's something about experience that you can't duplicate any other way. And I understand now what wisdom is. And, I understand what acceptance is. And I mean, that's so important. In about a little bit more than a year ago, I actually got sepsis. I don't, for people who don't know what that is, it's 250,000 people a year die from sepsis. Fortunately, I didn't know what it was. So when I got to the hospital and I couldn't make a decision and I was out there.
You can't think.
But I was I was in the emergency room, and they couldn't put me in a private room because all the rooms were filled. So I had to stay in the emergency room where the nurses are right there watching all the time. And when I started shivering, some nurse came in and put these warm blankets on me. And I was feeling suddenly taken care of. Mm-hmm. And I kind of knew that I wouldn't be in this position if I was going to die. I just didn't believe that that's where I was going. And I surrendered completely. And it was the most amazing sense of that peace that passeth understanding that I had read about so many times. And I don't like allopathic medicine. I don't trust it. And here I am being pumped full of antibiotics. But I saw they didn't want me to die. I really saw that. That's what nurses do. Yeah. And I had surrendered before, but never on that level. And it's like nothing can happen now that I don't see as okay. It may be uncomfortable while I'm going through it.
Well, and going back to your comment about wisdom, I think at 51, I finally feel that I have knowledge.
Yes.
But I don't know that I yet have wisdom.
I think it takes till I think the double number years, 44, 55, 65, 75, 77, 66, 77, have some sort of energy around them. And I can remember the day I turned 44. And I was living in this converted garage in the Venice, California ghetto.
Of course you were.
Where else? And I was making the bed, and I thought to myself, I think I'm finally beginning to understand how this thing called life works. Mm-hmm. And I think it takes till you're 50 to find out what you're not. And once you realize that, then you can start looking for who you are and stop being in a hurry. People will say to me, well, how long is this going to take? And I say, till you die.
So you're done, right? This is not an end, right? There's not an end date on this journey.
No, when it's over, it's over. And my father decided to leave at 77. So he was missing a whole section of life. At 80, I feel like I'm just getting started because I have that understanding of the cycles.
Yes.
When I hear, what is it the other day when they were talking about one of the politicians, and I thought to myself, well, we've done this before. We've done this. When you see the people on the streets, I used to arrange anti-Vietnam demonstrations, and because I had a little show business in me all the time. So I liked to make demonstrations. And, nothing is new, but everything is new. I mean, there's a saying something like that. And, in 1976, I was in meditation and I heard we're going into a period of great chaos. Many people will leave the planet. The chaos in the Middle East can get so bad that people will say, how can a benevolent God allow this to happen? And people are being trained to be points of light in the midst of the chaos. And at that point, I knew that I was one of those people and that I just had to wait for the chaos, 1976. So when we went through AIDS, I said, oh, here's the chaos. Not when we went into Iraq, I said, oh, here's the chaos. Not. We are on the outer edge of the chaos now because of climate change and all the political stuff that's going on. We are all where we're supposed to be, and we get to choose where we want to stand. Do we want to be on the side of the darkness that is about hate and violence and not working with other people? Or are we willing to be on the side of love? Are we willing to be on the side of life where you understand the force of love? Because to me, love is the healer. That's why love yourself comes first. And if you learn that energy and stop being angry at these people,
at everybody,
they just had terrible childhoods. We never got the manual. And all these wounded children are looking for some parent to save them, and they don't realize they have to save themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree. Well, I highly encourage everybody to reach out to you and continue this conversation.
Or listen to my podcast.
Or listen to your podcast as well. Remind me the name of your podcast. The
Prosperity Show. I'm the only Joan Sotkin. So
only Joan Sotkin. That makes it easy.
Google Joan Sotkin. Hard. You can't miss me.
You're not hiding. I can guarantee.
No. And the site is prosperityplace.com. And the ideas are a little offbeat because I am. And
that's where they work.
But I do like to talk. And you can set up a time to talk to me. I love to talk to people.
It's awesome. Thank you so much for spending time with me today.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining me on the Ready Yet podcast. I get so motivated by the amazing accomplishments of the remarkable people I meet, and I'm excited to be able to share some of their stories with you. You can find more episodes of Ready Yet at your favorite source for podcasts or at conqueryourbusiness.com. And if you've already decided that you are ready to become the person you need to be to achieve your big goals, feel free to reach out to find out how I can support you in your efforts. Or check out the Work with Erin page on the Conquer Your Business website. I also invite you to share this podcast with anyone you know who loves to learn and be inspired. And if you're so inclined, I'd be absolutely grateful for any reviews you'd like to share as well. Thanks again for joining me. This has been Erin Marcus, hopefully inspiring and helping you to go conquer your big dreams.